Back with the lawn engineer. So today we're going to take a deep dive into the controversy of, do I side discharge, do I mulch, or do I bag? Um, we all know what those mean. Side discharge, you're blowing your clippings onto the lawn. Mulching, supposedly you're making them disappear and returning them to the lawn. And then bagging, you're filling your bag full of grass clippings. But what is right for you in your situation? And the answer is, well, it depends. All right, what we have here is the ubiquitous walk behind lawnmower most Americans probably have. And these are called 3-in-1 mowers. So they come with the ability to side discharge. So all that is this little plastic chute here. You shove on the side, it props this flap open. Um, you take that off, you take the bag off, you flop that down. Now you're mulching. If you want to bag, well, of course, we throw the bag on the back and we're going to set up to bag. Which one of these is right for you? To answer that question, we need to look at how these rotary mowers cut grass and how each one of these methods affects airflow, because all of these type of mowers rely heavily on airflow to give you a good cut. Now, to understand how the airflow of each one of these cutting methods affects your cutting situation, we have to understand how these rotary mowers, basically spinning a knife in a circle, cuts the grass. So I've got a tuft of grass here, and I've got a knife. If we just put that across slowly, this is a relatively sharp utility blade, the grass will not get cut. So it relies on two things to actually slice these blades off, grass blades off. And that one is speed. So this is coming across really fast. But you can see here, so I got one of them with that. But as I'm doing that, you notice the grass blades are pushing over. So the airflow, in theory, holds the grass blade tight at the top while we cut the grass. So that allows this knife basically to cut through that grass while we're holding both sides. So you can see I get a lot more pieces cut that way. The other thing it relies on is repetition. So that blade is spinning so fast that normally you're getting multiple passes at the same blade of grass with the knife. Okay, first we're going to talk side discharge. This is the most commonly used method of cutting grass. If you buy a riding lawnmower or even a walk behind lawnmower, most of them come set up to side discharge. So to understand this cutting method, we have to discuss the airflow first. So this is a cross section of the mower deck. So if we cut it in half, we can see the blade here on a spindle, the engine up top, and this blade spinning around. You can see this blade shape is typically an airfoil, and really that is to act as a fan in addition to a knife. So what happens here is this type of cutting method sucks in air from below the deck in the sides there. And of course, then we have our grass up here, and there's a outlet through the deck in the side, hence the name side discharge, that this air that's sucking in goes up here, circulates around above the blade, and then goes out that hole cut in the side of the deck, along with all of the grass clippings that we just generated by cutting our grass. Now, this is very good for airflow. You can see the general trend of the air is up above the blade and then out of the deck. So this cutting method moves a lot of air and provides good tension on these grass blades so that they're held tightly and cut off. So if you've got grass blades that are kind of tipping over, laying down, it will also help vacuum those up straight as this mower comes along to provide a fairly nice quality of cut with grass blades at uniform length even if they are tipped over, they will be vacuumed up and then tip back over as you go past. So the one check mark of this is, or one positive of this is quality of cut. One negative of this is lack of control. So we can't control these grass blades very well. You have to be very diligent if you do not want these grass blades to go into your flower beds and things like that. Um, and cutting one way so that they're blown out into the yard, things like that. Just a little bit lack of control of those clippings coming out. All right, our next method of cutting is bagging. So this will look very familiar. It is the same airflow pattern that we have for side discharge. It is pulling in air from below the deck up to the blade, circulates around above the blade, and exits the deck. And we just have a bag attached to the side here. And the only difference is we have a bag attached to the side here that all of these grass clippings that get generated fall into. So this is restricting the airflow a little bit. If you notice, all of your bag types have a breathable fabric on there so that the air that is coming into the deck and moving around can exit through that perforation, the breathable fabric on your bagger. So a plus for this one is cut quality also. It has slightly reduced airflow and vacuum compared to the side discharge, but most bagging kits that you have, or if you set the mower up specifically for bagging, they will have a higher sail on the mowing blade here to provide more pressure and more airflow to overcome the resistance of the bag. The other positive of this is it collects clippings. So that is a positive to keep your flower beds clean and your yard looking nice. There is a negative to this, and the negative here would be you have to dispose of the clippings. And then also the overall health of the lawn. It is nice to return those clippings back to your lawn. It is a source of nitrogen, but that can easily be overcome with some additional fertilizing. All right, the last cutting method here is mulching. So the idea here is there is no exit for airflow on the mower deck at all. So what happens basically is you get a tornado or a vortex of air in here. Ideally, what you'd have is air coming in here, sucked up, and then returned back in the center. But due to centripetal force of the blade and the rotating air mass, I have not seen that executed. What happens is basically you create this, and so what you're relying on is that grass standing up straight and being cut off. And these grass blades kind of live up here and then slowly fall back into your grass. They do have an opportunity to be recut. And so you get finer clippings with this method that are returned back to the lawn. Some of the negatives of this, if you have grass blades that are naturally bent over, this is actually going to push those down. This vortex is going to push those over even more and miscutting those. And some that are even standing up, if they're not very thick bladed and rigid, they will get pushed over and missed in cutting. So this type of cut normally leaves a pretty pretty ragged cut. And then when we're talking about the overall evenness of grass blades after mowing. There are some positives to this method. So one positive is the small grass clippings, small and controlled. So these are not flying out of the side of the deck in the way that side discharge is going into flower beds and stuff like that. As you go past those, it basically is returning below the deck there. All right, now that we know about the airflow of those three cutting methods, we can make some conclusions. So the first one, quality of cut. Side discharge and bagging are the top. Mulching, I wouldn't even call it third. I'd call it last place, distant last place. That comes with a few caveats. So we talk about that vacuum being required. It is especially important for cool season lawns. I know in the warm season grasses, they've got some very thick bladed, stout grass that does not need to be vacuumed up and held while that blade is coming across and cutting it. But for cool season lawns, if you care about quality of cut, I say forget about it. Especially if you're trying to cut at 3+ inches, don't do it. Just don't do it. And then we talk about health of the lawn and returning those clippings. That's the big, the mulching, the recycling. Really, if we think about it, returning those grass clippings and the nitrogen back to our lawn for a healthy lawn, it does not matter which method they return to it, whether it's a side discharge or mulch. So if you want to do that, I highly recommend just side discharging. The one negative to that, obviously, is the control of those grass clippings, getting places that you don't want. So I think John Deere on their riding lawnmowers, Zero Turns did a great invention with this mulch control. They've got a lever you can turn on the mulching when you're going past a flower bed or something like that to close that deck off, to keep those clean, and then once you get past that, open it back up, because they know, the mulching cut quality is just bottom of the barrel. But if we talk about those grass blade, clippings getting back on the lawn, it doesn't matter if they're 2 inches long or half an inch long. They're returning that nitrogen back to your soil. It does not matter what size they are. So mulching myth, that's busted. Side discharge, they're going back on your lawn. It's staying there. They're not disappearing. They're even there. They say returning the clippings to your lawn all season long is about worth 1 pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. I personally choose to bag my lawn. I've tried mulching. I've tried mulching with a Lawn Boy WalkBehind. I've tried mulching with a Toro time cutter, the 30-inch WalkBehind. I've tried mulching with a John Deere lawn tractor with a 48-inch deck. I've tried with a John Deere 1 Series tractor with a 54-inch deck, and they were all fails. I could not stand the ragged cut quality. And in my particular situation, I'll show you why that is. Here I've got a perfect example of my lawn. It is a mix of bluegrass, perennial ryegrass, and fine fescue. And the fine fescue is probably the hardest to cut. So that is an extremely fine blade. I'll find one here of grass. And you can see here, a lot of this is laying over already. So that is one grass blade. That is the reason I cannot mulch. And if you're trying to mulch this grass, you're going to fail every time. There is no vacuum to pull this stuff up. In fact, there's negative vacuum. You're pushing this stuff down, and you have to cut very low to actually make it work. The other thing I've experienced with mulching with this very fine bladed grass in a relatively wet environment that I have is the stuff gets chopped up too much and turns into a green paste and just adheres itself to the deck. And then when you go to lift the front wheels of a walk behind mower to make a turn, half of that falls out and it becomes just a giant mess of like guacamole. Um, I want to like mulching. I've tried it so many times, but I finally realized to stop hitting my head against the wall and embrace the bagging. And so I bag because I've got a lot of flower beds, um, areas. I've transitioned to landscape stone that I do not want those grass clippings to go into. So that's organic material, just like it's returning to the soil and providing fertilizer. It accumulates in those flower beds and creates organic material for weeds to grow. So it is a high priority for me to keep that out of there. If I have those weeds start growing, then I have to use Roundup or herbicide or some sort of chemical to control those. To me, it's better collect those grass clippings, put a little bit of more. I use more orgonite, a natural fertilizer on the lawn. I'd much rather do that and keep things clean. So you heard it me. We did a deep dive on cutting. We know why mulching provides a poor quality of cut. Now, not to say that, like I said, in some of those warm season grasses with a very robust, thick grass blade that stands up strong, you can get away with mulching. But if you're in a northern climate with some of this fine bladed grass, forget about it. Don't even try it. It's going to look terrible. Don't do it. Adios.